All right, welcome back. I'm TJ. We're doing another video with our friend Jonas. I'm not even Wackershauser. I suck. How do you say
Good
your name?
enough.
How is it?
Wackershauser. You don't have to be able to pronounce that. I'm dude, all the butcherings of my name I've heard.
Oh man, I can imagine.
What you just did was better than 99% of that.
You don't have to make me feel good about myself. So the idea here is with anything in this hobby and RC industry, period. It's always growing. It's always, we learn from each other. And just like anything, when we put something out to the community, there's a lot of people out there that are very, very smart. And we got a lot of feedback. Jonas actually took it and grew with it. And so now the setup, we're going to go through in this video exactly what changed, how it is better. And what I really like about it is it's more user-friendly. So not everybody uses the same switches for everything. What I use switches for, Jonas, is literally backwards. So I went through and changed some switches around. This setup is actually going to give you the ability to do that so much easier. So it's not going to be as in-depth as the last video. If you want to see all the inner workings of the initial setup that Jonas did, click over, go check out that video. You can see his flight videos, which are absolutely incredible. I can only ever hope to be half the pilot he is. But with all of that rambling out of the way, Jonas, man, really appreciate your time again.
Oh yes, so let's first recap what we have here. This is the OMPHobby M1. This setup is a OpenTX setup, mostly made for the TX16S, but it will also work on other radios. And the idea behind it is to kind of improve the flying experience you have with these little helicopters. Because there are some things that can be improved on, there are some things that we can use to make a custom rescue setup. And we covered all this in the last video, basically how it works, what we're doing. And we have improved a couple points. For example, we have easier switch assignment because I got the feedback that people fly very different switches, as TJ said. So we've unified all of that so you can switch your switches around in literally seconds. We have banked collective, both for flying and for rescue. So the TX file now includes 3 different collective curves for your flight modes and for your rescue modes, so you can have different climb rates if you're rescuing at different RPMs. We also have a little fix for something the flight controller does. When you're landing, you may have experienced this, that the heli, when you pull throttle hold, will go into a clockwise spin. I found a fix that fixes that 95% of the time, and I have added a stability mode switch to this setup. So let's dive right in and take a look at what we have. TX16S, as previously, with a beautiful model image, which I got from, I think the website's called Sky Raccoon, which is a nice resource for these little images. And we're gonna take a look, because the most requested thing was easier switch assignment. And what I have done is I've kind of used the logical switches to do this. I'm just going to show this into the camera like that. And you can see that this menu right here, you navigate over to it with the left-right buttons, and you will have all your switches for this setup here. So the first 3 switches, you see SE, SE, SE. SE is the little switch up here, which I use for my RPM switching. So you can see it's away from me, LO1 is illuminated, middle precision is LO2, away from me or towards me if I'm holding the radio correctly, LO3, and that way you can switch your flight modes. This logical switch is then taken and fed all through the setup and used everywhere where flight modes are requested. So if you want to, for example, change the switch, you would just go in, this is a bit tricky, change this, say I want my flight mode over here, and boom, I can now switch RPM 3 with this switch. And then we have the throttle hold switch. This is the safety switch. This is the rescue switch. And this is a stability mode switch I added. For those of you who want to get their first hops in without the heli being in like 3D mode, if you have not bought AccuRC yet, wink wink. Okay, so now that we talked about the switches, let's take a look at what the new switches do, especially the self-level switch. So you can see it's in normal fiberless mode right now. This wash plate always returns to center. But if I take the radio, let me bring that into frame, and switch down switch SB, you see it goes into self-leveling, and this wash plate will now try to put the heli right side up all the time. Switch it out of SB, goes back to normal fiberless mode.
Yeah, and I think it really comes to light with a lot of the guys and, well, gals that are flying this that are new, that they want the ability to be able to switch that stability mode on while they're trying to learn. So it's like, yeah, you know, if you're an idle up 1 or 2 and you're trying to go inverted, obviously you don't want that on. But if you're a new pilot and you're still learning orientations, that stability switch helps you not flip the helicopter over. So having that in the setup, definitely a big deal, man. Appreciate that.
Exactly. So you can choose whether you fly in stability for your first hops or if you go straight into 3D mode. But the nice thing is, our rescue switch, as we configured it, still works. So you can have both. You can have a stability mode and you can have rescue for your 3D flying. And what you will also see is that once we fold the blades and we go into different flight modes, let's do this in RPM 1. I'll bring the heli in front of the white wall here and go to 0 collective. So you can see this. If I pull rescue in RPM 1, the lowest RPM, you will see it will give more collective than when I pull it in RPM 3. You see how the blade tip distance is smaller here? Do that again. More collective in RPM 1, less collective in RPM 3. And that's just kind of a basic physics thing. If you have less RPM, you need more collective to make it climb. So we have 3 different collective angles for the rescue mode depending on the RPM you're in. Another thing I did is I added 3 different collective curves because as egoistic as I am, I only put in 1 curve because that's what's sufficient for my flying. But then people came in and said, hey, what if I want to have a flatter collective curve at higher RPMs so I don't overload it with the high collective angle I need for lower RPMs? So went to work again. Added 3 collective curves, and if we go to full collective and I switch my RPMs, you can see we now have different amounts of collective per flight mode, and you can fully customize these curves to your heart's content. If you want a curve where it starts out with 0 instead of full negative in the lowest RPM, you can have that. You can customize 3 curves, 3 flight modes, it's all yours.
So now if somebody's using your specific setup, what are the curves, the pitch curves, dependent on the flight modes?
Well, I am someone who believes in linear collective curves. So if I go into curves here, you can see collective pitch 1, 2, and 3, CP1, 2, and 3. And pretty much CP1 is just plus 100, minus 100. CP2 is plus 90, minus 90. And CP3 is plus 80, minus 80.
So does that mean like the lower head speed would be the higher pitch curve?
Yep.
Would be the 100 to 100?
Yep,
okay,
exactly.
Gotcha. So it's giving you more bite,
Yep.
the slower the head speed
Exactly.
is.
The slower the blades, the more collective you need to fly, and therefore gives you a bit more bite. I also increased my maximum collective for that because we are now able to limit it in software. So before I ran like 14 degrees or a bit more. Now I run 16 degrees, which is 69 millimeters between the blade tips when folded. And then there's one more thing I did in this setup, and you may find this interesting if I just show you what it does. Watch what happens. You can see my channels all here. The rudder channel specifically is channel 4. And if I switch on the motor, nothing happens. But if I switch it off, see if you can spot what it does. You see that? What channel 4 does?
Yeah, your channel 4 spikes real quick.
Yep,
Yeah.
it spikes. And the idea behind that is the OMP Fiberless has this little perk that when you kind of put it into a hover just above the ground and switch it off, that sometimes, not always, the tail motor goes to full thrust for just a split second and it will basically do this upon landing, which can be a bit annoying. It's not critical because it always lands and skids and bounces around. It hasn't tipped over on me when it did that. Well, I found a way to mitigate that 95% of the time. It's done it once or twice in like testing it over the course of 10 batteries. That's achieved by simply a tiny little mix which institutes a little spike to the left when when the auto rotation switch is released. You can see it right there. You don't have to touch that, you don't have to do anything. It will not affect the way the heli flies, it will not affect the heli handles when you switch it off. It's just this little thing that's in this profile, in this radio profile, that fixes this little annoyance. One more thing I can show is that I reorganized the curves a little bit. So they're all in a proper order now. So we start with hold, then we have throttle for flight mode 1, 2, and 3. Same percentages as before. Then we have collective pitch 1, 2, and 3. And then we have rescue 0, which is the flat pitch for the rescue. And then we have rescue 1, 2, and 3. And you can see these straight lines I talked about, with the higher collective for the lower RPM and the lower collective for the higher RPMs.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the rescue really changed from, you know, other people flying it, and then they'll hit the rescue. Well, they're not running as high of collective, and so it would actually drop out of the sky a little bit. So the kind of idea behind it, which actually there's going to be another video that's literally just about the rescue switch. It's going to go through, explain every single step that you can set it up yourself without needing to use Jonas's model file. So it's just going to give everybody the ability to do that without needing to learn how to do it yourself. Well, other than the video that we're literally about to do.
Okay, brief explanation of this custom rescue mode. So we use the self-leveling ability of the flybar list, which I already showed. Swashblade will always try to level the helicopter. We're going to use that and add collective to it to build a custom rescue mode. So what happens when I pull rescue is, let's imagine the helicopter is upside down. I pull rescue. The helicopter will try to flip and then give positive collective. 0.3 seconds later. I found 0.3 seconds to be the sweet spot for flipping over and giving collective, so that it's upright enough in all RPMs for the collective input to not slam it into the ground or into a building or into you. So basically making sure it's upright before giving it collective. And then if I pull rescue, let me just bring up the radio. You can see it first levels the swash and then punches in positive collective. So it rises up once it leveled. That's all there is to it. And we now have that for 3 different RPMs with 3 different collective values. And I found it to be very, very reliable for such a simple setup.
All right, so if you missed Jonas's first, setup video that we did, links in the description for that. There's a ton of information that he goes through. And then this is kind of just like an amendment where it's here's the custom switches are so much easier to do now. The different levels of the rescue switch, the different collective pitch levels. So there's just a few other things, model files in the description. There's another video that we did on how to actually take that model file and put it on your transmitter. So links for that one as well. Jonas, if you don't know who he is, AccuRC. If you look up AccuRC Precision Simulator, it's in the description. Everything's in there. Are you seeing a pattern? Everything's in that description. But Jonas is an amazing pilot. He's done a lot of incredible videos that have helped a lot of people, myself included, over on the AccuRC YouTube channel. On Jonas's personal channel, he's got some incredible flight videos, especially with the M1. Jonas, man, I really appreciate all the time and effort you're putting into this, and honestly, he's not paid to do any of this, so
I'm not.
Thank you. So yeah, anything you want to say before we close this one out?
Buy AccuRC, buy an M1 or M2, and enjoy this beautiful hobby.
I love it, man. All right, guys, appreciate you watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you're not, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Bye.
Bye.